Is the Shroud of Turin really the shroud that belonged to Jesus? That is what we're going to see in this discussion today. The evidence for the shroud. Stick till the end because we're going to talk about it and I'm going to explain why I believe it really is the shroud that belongs to Jesus. And I hope you enjoy the video.
I mean, just recently they verified the Shroud of Turin. Have you seen that?
I've been reading about it, and I know that there's some contention, there's some discussion and debate about it, but they used to think that it was only a couple hundred years old.
Yeah.
And now they've changed that.
Yeah, they said no, it's back then.
They also don't understand how it was made, which to me is very fascinating because it's not paint. It's not. They don't know what caused the image itself and how that technology would have even been available.
It wasn't. No.
A couple thousand years ago.
An intense light. I mean, atomic. To leave almost like a photographic imprint on a piece of cloth.
Yeah.
And
it's wild. Pull that up. Pull the Shroud of Turin up.
Oh yeah.
It's wild to look at because it's so interesting.
Oh yeah. And you can see it that it depicts a first century Hebrew male because the hairstyle was from the first century and a Hebrew hairstyle, that he was about 6 feet tall, that he was completely scourged all over his body. He was crucified. That's it there.
The one on the left is the one on the right is just like an artistic rendition.
That's the face.
Yeah, click on that one. The face. Yeah, that's good enough. Get that large. That's fucking crazy.
Yeah, yeah. Scourged, beaten.
Yeah.
The wounds on the thorns, the hands, the feet, and the scourging, and the hairstyle was from the first century. And the pollens that they found in the cloth were from that region.
Yeah.
Also, the weave was a first century weave that was typical. And another guy, an archaeologist who I knew who actually translated the Passion into Aramaic, told me that if you look close, you can see the image of a Tiberius coin marks on the eyes. Now, I don't know if that's real or not. I've never actually checked that, but that there's images of Tiberius on the coin.
So they would put the coins over the eyes?
Yeah. So that would date it. But they have now verified that it does actually go back to that time period. For a while, they were testing pieces that had been repaired in the 13th century or, you know. So.
What is the latest on that, Jamie? Can you see, like...
I was trying to get that. I have 2 different articles from within the last 6 months saying
the
opposite
Smithsonian
things. So
yeah, opposite, of course.
Dig into which one sounded the most accurate.
Well, it's such a crazy thing to even try to verify. Like, what are you saying? You're saying that this is really the shroud that Jesus was covered in? So you're saying Jesus historically absolutely did exist, and we think that this is the shroud that covered him. That alone, people, incredulity, people's immediately their hackles raise, like, wait a minute, and they just instead of like looking at it objectively, they almost always want to look at it from a point of view of disproving it immediately, dismissing it immediately.
But that's that's science, isn't it? You have to sort of you play the devil's advocate, and that's okay. Go for it.
What did you find on the Shroud of Turin, Jamie?
Both those articles just asked like one person, like one researcher thought it was, another researcher based off of their research said it wasn't.
Can you put it to the one that thought it was? So it says, study published in the journal Heritage, the authors conducted dating work on a sample from the shroud, coming to the conclusion that it may be a 2,000-year-old relic. The shroud, which has long been the subject of intense scrutiny, features a faint image of a man some believe is the body of Jesus miraculously imprinted onto the cloth. While the latest study does not discuss the question of whether or not the artifact was indeed Jesus' burial shroud, specifically, the authors did find its age is roughly consistent with his time. Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, isn't the Smithsonian guy all for it? I don't know. Maybe that's him. I don't know. But, yeah. There's for and against. There's always been.
Yeah, always. But it's just...
But the image is like...
it's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Whatever it is pretty crazy. And the fact that they don't know how they made it is also pretty crazy.
Yeah.
It's not a painting.
Nope.
They're not exactly sure how it even came about.
Yeah. It had to have been some kind of intense light.
Well, the thought was that even trying to replicate something like that today would be incredibly difficult to do.
Sure. It's like an X-ray vision. You
know?
Yeah. It's like an X-ray. That's what you really see it in the negative only.
Right.
You know. It's
right.
crazy.
It's like a negative. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, I buy it, but that's not the only reason I buy it. I mean, I think there's other logical reasons why I believe. So,
Like, what are those?
okay, stuff that happens in your own life, the results you get from actually appealing to a power greater than yourself. And I mean, I don't think it's any secret. I am flawed in the fact that I am by nature born an alcoholic, right? I did drugs, I did alcohol, so, and there was nothing that could stop me from doing that. Nothing. So I was really kind of you're on a downhill run. So I regard the fact that I was able to appeal to something greater than myself to help me and actually stop me doing that. I think that's a miracle. It is. For me, it is. And for many, so.
Well, that is the thing about AA, right? It's a part of the whole process is appealing to a higher power.
Sure. It's a spiritual program.
Yeah.
Because you're suffering a spiritual malady,
Yeah.
So it's a spiritual cure. And that's the essence, I think, of why it works. Because you can't explain it otherwise. I mean, you kind of can. But I think what you're being asked to do is to think about other people and other things more than yourself, because it's kind of an ego disease.
Yeah.
So if you...
That is the problem with addiction, right? It's very narcissistic.
Very narcissistic.
Because you're constantly thinking about yourself and what you need. I need a drink. I need a bump. I need I need something.
Sure, I need... And no matter what you need, it's never going to be enough.
Right.
So you actually have to appeal to something outside that you consider bigger and better than yourself, which instantly kind of pushes you more in the direction of humility. because you're not the center of the universe anymore. Right. And that you can't do it. And the first step in any of that sort of stuff is accepting that you are powerless over it. That's the most powerful step you can do, is that you're powerless. When you realize that, you're like, okay. Yeah. I have to appeal to something better than me. And that, to me, is a miracle.
All right, Joe Rogan and Mel, after that discussion, they move into something completely different. What do you guys think? Does the Shroud of Turin, does it belong to Jesus, or is it just a myth? I personally believe that, yes, it is the shroud that belongs to Christ. Why? Because, as Mel Gibson said in the end, when you look at all the evidence we have for Christ, when you put all the puzzle pieces together, when I see the evidence for the existence of God, the historical case for Jesus, the transformation of the disciples, and the working of the Holy Spirit in our day and age, and when you see the miracles, the countless near-death experiences, and the countless miracles that we see in the US or in the Middle East. If you look at it in the Middle East and you see the saints, for example, you see how a lot of saints, there's evidence for how their garments, bones, or entire bodies, they defy natural decay because they are saints, and saints are less on the scale when compared to Jesus. God allowed their garments or something related to them to remain intact, defying natural decay. How far is it to say that it's unreasonable to believe that this shroud couldn't belong to Jesus? And this is Jesus we're talking about. It wouldn't be unreasonable. When looking at the shroud by itself, setting everything aside, well, maybe, it might be hard to believe, but when we take everything together in one picture, then it doesn't become unreasonable to believe. And I think that is why a lot of people don't want to accept the Shroud of Turin, because they don't want to accept where it points at. That's what they hate. It points at something that defies their worldview. And I think that is why there's a lot of hatred towards the Shroud of Turin, because it's also something tangible, something they could see and look at. And people hate the consequences of what that entails. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. And as usual, stay standing firm in faith and standing firm in the one who is truth himself.